What happens when a black female CEO walks into the car showroom she herself founded and is denied service right in front of her entire staff? A plain, unmarked light brown envelope with no name, no stamp, and no company logo was left quietly on Janelle Harris's desk on a cloudy Monday morning at the Manhattan headquarters of Aurelian Motors. She was the kind of woman who never left the office before 9 p.m., one of the few black female CEOs in the luxury automotive industry, and the driving force behind building Aurelian into a brand synonymous with power, elegance, and progress. But that morning, when her eyes landed on the envelope bearing a handwritten title that read, "I used to believe in Aurelian until last week," everything seemed to fall silent. The letter was written in black ink, with no salutation and no sender's name. It was a raw, compressed, and desperate account from a man named Darius Miles, a black entrepreneur from Atlanta who had visited Aurelian's Beverly Hills showroom with hopes of purchasing a nearly $400,000 Aurelian Mirage Limited. He was ignored, redirected to a cheaper model, and ultimately denied the right to place a deposit under the pretense of not meeting qualifications. The closing line of the letter sent a chill down Janelle's spine. "If Aurelian has changed, I hope you, the one who built it, still remember why you started." Janelle sat motionless for nearly 10 minutes, not because she had never heard of covert discrimination in the industry, but because it had happened within the very system she had built to fight against it. She silently opened a drawer, took out her personal phone, and dialed her private assistant, Xavier. "I need a flight to Los Angeles first thing tomorrow. Not through the company. No notifications." She hung up before Xavier could ask anything further. No one at the company knew that Janelle had once worked as a sales associate at a rundown Memphis dealership, where she was often dismissed by customers and overlooked by managers because of her skin color. And no one knew that for over 10 years, every Aurelian showroom had been equipped with a special camera room, one that only the CEO could access. That night, Janelle didn't return to her penthouse. She rented a small room near Newark Airport, bringing only an old backpack and a few plain outfits. She left behind her tailored luxury suits, her Patek Philippe watch, and the reputation that made people hesitate whenever her name was mentioned. Tomorrow, she would walk into her largest West Coast showroom, not as the controlling shareholder, but as a middle-aged black woman with no presence, no brand, and no advance introduction. An anonymous customer, carrying one question: "If someone like me walks in, will I be treated like anyone else?" Yet, one small detail lingered in her mind. The envelope had been placed directly on her desk, bypassing reception and her assistant. Inside, attached to the letter, was a copy of Darius's cancelled invoice and a blurred printout from a showroom security camera, the kind of footage only internal personnel could access. That meant someone on the inside was helping her, or warning her. She took a slow breath. Tomorrow, she would face the truth. But that truth might not only be about how customers were treated. It could reveal a deeper fracture among the very people she had trusted most. The rented SUV from LAX eased to a stop in front of the Aurelian Beverly Hills showroom at exactly 10 a.m. the next morning. Janelle Harris stepped out, her hand gripping the strap of a charcoal gray canvas bag, her sunglasses covering half her face. No valet came to open the door for her. Under the brilliant California sun, the glass facade of the showroom gleamed in reflection, a place where million-dollar vehicles were displayed like works of art, beautiful, pristine, and entirely unforgiving of imperfection. She took a deep breath, adjusted the collar of her open-neck white shirt, and pulled the door open. No one looked up. A young receptionist, red hair, navy blue nail polish, was still busy tapping away at her phone. After a few seconds, she glanced up and gave a faint, mechanical smile, the kind that could be summoned with the press of a button. "Hello, how can I help you?" she asked. Janelle responded with a calm, polite tone, the voice of a composed customer. "I'd like to see the Aurelian Mirage Limited. Is that possible?" A fleeting hesitation, almost imperceptible, flickered across the receptionist's face. Her gaze dropped to Janelle's worn white sneakers, then briefly to the unbranded canvas bag. "Ah, that model usually requires an appointment. Do you have one scheduled?" "No," Janelle said, "but I believe there's one on display here." The girl nodded, her smile unchanged. "Let me check with the manager." As she turned to leave, she whispered something to a colleague behind the counter. They both chuckled softly. Janelle caught the phrase, "likes to daydream." 10 minutes later, a man appeared. Navy suit, polished leather shoes, rimless glasses. His name tag read, Charles Wexler, Showroom Director. His face wore a courteous smile, but his eyes revealed something colder behind the mask. "Hello, I'm Charles. I hear you're interested in seeing the Mirage Limited?" "Yes," Janelle replied. "If it's on the floor, I'd like to take a closer look." He glanced briefly across the room, to where the car sat center stage beneath the spotlight, draped in a sheer white cover that seemed to tease rather than conceal. Then he turned back, his smile fading just slightly. "I'm afraid that vehicle is scheduled for a private viewing. Special models like that are shown by appointment only. You're welcome to come back next week if that works for you." Janelle nodded, her gaze slowly drifting toward the car. "Actually," she said softly, "I just need a few minutes. I'm already familiar with the Mirage, its specs and design. I'd simply like to see it in person." Charles smiled again, but his eyes had turned colder. "We have a confidentiality policy for VIP clients. I hope you understand." Just then, the showroom door opened again. A white couple, casually dressed in t-shirts and khakis, stepped inside. The moment they appeared, Marla, the receptionist, left her post immediately, her smile suddenly radiant. "Mir and Mrs. Belmont, the Mirage again, just like last time." Janelle stood still, her hand resting on her bag strap. Charles glanced their way, then quickly looked away. Another staff member approached with champagne, escorting the new guests directly to the vehicle Janelle had just been denied. There was no longer any doubt. And yet, what made Janelle's brow furrow wasn't the favoritism. It was a glance from the far right side of the showroom. A young woman, brown hair, dressed in a staff uniform that didn't quite match the others, stood between two SUV models. Her eyes followed everything that had just happened. And when they met Janelle's, she didn't look away. She didn't flinch. Her gaze quietly conveyed a message. "I've seen this happen every day." Janelle walked slowly toward the seating area, saying nothing more. If this morning had been a test, then her own showroom had just failed the very first question. That afternoon, Janelle Harris sat alone in a small cafe tucked behind Santa Monica Boulevard. The place wasn't famous, but it was a regular haunt for service workers after long, tiring shifts. She didn't order anything except a cold espresso. Her phone sat beside her, powered off. She was waiting, not for a person, but for someone's courage. And she was right. Exactly 27 minutes after she sent a text to the number scribbled hastily on a napkin. "If you truly want to speak, meet me at Loma Cafe at 5:30, just the two of us, no names." The glass door behind her opened. The girl stepped in, the sunset casting its glow across the edges of her faded, dark uniform. The name on her small pinned tag read M. Torres. Her face was young, but her eyes carried the guarded look of someone who had lived too long inside a system that no longer believed in fairness. She chose the table near Janelle, but didn't sit immediately. "I don't know if this is a mistake," she said quietly, "but I saw you today, and I saw you look at me like you knew I'd seen too much." Janelle gave a small nod. "I don't want you to get in trouble. We're just two strangers having a conversation in the same city." Maria sat down. Her hands gripped the edge of her steaming teacup, as if trying to keep herself from shaking. "Who are you?" she asked, not out of curiosity, but as a warning. Janelle didn't answer. Instead, she opened her phone and swiped to an internal schematic, the operations layout of the showroom, then turned the screen off. "What are you here to find out?" Maria asked, this time with a different look in her eyes, one of readiness. Janelle paused for a moment, then said, "I need to know how that place treats people who aren't preferred clients." Maria leaned back in her chair. A long silence passed before she reached into her jacket and pulled out a small USB drive, placing it on the table. "I've been recording internal meetings for the past 6 weeks. My name's not in any of these files, but if you use them, I'll lose my job. And if I lose my job, I can't pay for my brother's school." Janelle didn't reach for the USB. "I don't take anything from someone being forced to choose between conscience and responsibility," she said. "But I can protect the people brave enough to stand up for what's right." Maria looked at her for a long time. "So what are you going to do?" she asked. "I'm going to dismantle that system. From the inside out," Janelle replied, her eyes gleaming with the cold clarity of someone who had tasted enough betrayal to know how it operates. "But I can't do it alone." Maria lowered her gaze, and when she looked up, her eyes no longer trembled. "You have me," she said, "but don't tell anyone I was first. Make them all believe I was just on the outside." Janelle nodded, "And I won't forget that." At 9 o'clock the next morning, Janelle Harris stood in silence on the rooftop of a hotel not far from the Beverly Hills showroom. Arms crossed, she looked out over a city just beginning to stir into a new day. In her ear played the audio recording from the night before. The voice of Charles Wexler, speaking to his senior staff, arrogant and unapologetic, ringing clear, "We have to keep this showroom clean. Not everyone with money deserves Aurelian. Let them figure that out on their own without us having to say it." Janelle stopped the playback. That was enough. In the palm of her hand was a newly registered Aurelian VIP membership card under the name David Roth. This man, a longtime friend, white, a successful tech investor, would be the lead actor in the biggest test she had ever staged. He wore a light blue blazer, open-collar shirt, and leather loafers, not flashy, but certainly not forgettable. "You're sure about this?" David asked, adjusting his watch. "I just need you to walk in like a wealthy customer with no appointment," Janelle replied. "Ask to see the Mirage, nothing more." At 10:32 a.m., David walked through the glass doors. Janelle observed from a distance, watching via tablet connected to temporary surveillance feeds set up by an old group of friends from the internal audit team. A one-day covert network. The video was crystal clear. Marla, the receptionist, stood up immediately as David entered. She smiled, offered him a drink, even suggested a private viewing of the vehicle despite no prior appointment. And just as expected, Charles Wexler emerged from his office, full of charm and warmth. "Mr. Roth, what an honor. We actually have the Mirage Platinum Edition on display today. Right this way. It's a rare piece, and we usually don't show it to walk-ins." Charles gestured grandly. gliding his hand across the hood of the car like he was presenting a museum artifact. David, as instructed, asked about the interior details, leather color options, the active driving system. Charles answered smoothly and enthusiastically, opened the car door for him, invited him to sit, and casually asked, "Do you prefer French wine or Italian espresso?" The entire exchange was captured from 3 camera angles. When Charles added, with a knowing smile, "We always know how to recognize someone with taste," Janelle shut off the screen. She didn't need to hear another word. The game was over. That afternoon, she sent the footage to 3 people: the executive vice president, the head of internal communications, and the chairman of the board. The subject line of the email read, "What happens when the customer changes skin color?" The attached video was exactly 12 minutes long. The executive boardroom on the 38th floor of Aurelian Motors' Los Angeles headquarters was designed like a stage of power. An oval-shaped table, dim lighting, spotlighting premium leather chairs, every footstep echoing with a tone of its own. At exactly 10 a.m., the full executive board was present, from the heads of strategy, communications, and finance, to 3 senior members of the board of directors. The only seat left vacant was the chair at the head of the table. No one knew that today, the person who would take that seat would no longer be the quiet force behind the scenes, but a storm of justice, quietly knocking at the door. When Janelle Harris entered, no one recognized her immediately. Gone were the casual clothes. Gone was the cautious gaze. She wore a jet black suit, a crisp high-collar blouse, pointed heels, and her hair pulled back in a sleek bun. The composure she carried was not of someone seeking answers, but of someone ready to deliver decisions. Charles Wexler sat to the right of the table, jolting slightly at the sight of her. His eyes darted around the room. No one reacted quickly enough. "Good morning," Janelle said, her voice calm but striking the wooden floor like a hammer. "I am Janelle Harris, Chief Executive Officer and founder of Aurelian Motors." 1 second of stillness. Then came the hurried sound of paper flipping. One board member cleared his throat. "I'm not here to report on revenue or discuss market indicators," she continued, taking her seat at the head of the table. "I'm here to speak about honor, something we are losing day by day without even realizing it." She pressed a button to project onto the screen. First, the internal audio recording played. Charles's voice rang out, clear and sharp. "Not everyone with money deserves Aurelian. Let them figure that out on their own." Several heads turned toward Charles. He began twisting his hands, lips pressed tight. Janelle didn't pause. The next screen showed video footage of David Roth being warmly greeted, led into the VIP room, sipping espresso, and receiving a private viewing of the Mirage, the same car Janelle herself had been denied. The final sound, a staff member's cheerful voice. "Customers like you are always shown first," landed like the final nail in the coffin of a two-faced system. 4 days ago, Janelle went on, I walked into our largest showroom, the one I personally helped build, in the form of an unknown customer, with no brand, no visible power, and I was denied. Not because I lacked money, but because I lacked something your system, Charles, believes defines worthiness. She turned to face him. "Would you like to say anything before I announce my decision?" Charles opened his mouth, a blink. Then he said, "I was only following the strategy for identifying potential customers. There is no discrimination policy. What you saw was just a misunderstanding." But Janelle had already stood. Then why was a white man in jeans and a t-shirt shown the car immediately, while I, the founder of this brand, was not. No one answered. We built Aurelian as a brand for anyone with passion, not just for those who look like money. She looked each person in the eye. I am officially suspending Charles Wexler effective today, pending disciplinary review. In addition, the Beverly Hills showroom will be closed for 48 hours for a full audit of its internal culture. The CFO started to speak, but she cut in. Anyone unwilling to restructure this company toward fairness may step down from the executive board by the end of this week. 2 weeks after the pivotal meeting, the temporarily closed sign was finally taken down from the front of the Aurelian Beverly Hills showroom. Inside, the gleaming black tile floor had been polished until it reflected the ceiling lights like a perfect mirror. But the change wasn't in the design. The change was in the people walking through those doors, no longer judged by the shoes they wore or the wallet they carried, but by their presence alone. Janelle Harris stood by the large second-floor window, watching the first customer of the day, an older black woman walking in hand with her young grandson. A young associate stepped forward, bowed slightly, opened the door, and asked the first question not with suspicion, but with care. Would you prefer a private space, or would you like your grandson to explore the car with you? Simple, natural, free of assumptions, the way every luxury brand ought to operate, with quiet respect. At that very moment, across the country in a central hall in New York, Janelle appeared at a press conference announcing a sweeping reform of the entire Aurelian system. We are not calling this a restructuring, she said, standing before a white backdrop bearing the brand's monochrome logo. We are calling this the rebuilding of trust. She then introduced 3 new pillars. First, mandatory training for all staff on implicit bias and customer psychology. Second, a ban on any form of customer ranking based on non-financial factors. And third, the establishment of an independent equity review board with a newly announced member, Maria Torres. Maria's appearance on stage delivered a powerful emotional finish. Dressed in an elegant suit, her hair tied neatly, her eyes no longer hesitant as they once were. She stood beside Janelle like a firm period on the past and a bold dash toward the future. I never thought I'd stand here today, Maria said, her voice trembling slightly, yet firm. But maybe justice doesn't begin with something grand. Maybe it starts with small people choosing not to stay silent. Immediately after, a short documentary played, capturing moments where once dismissed customers were now welcomed with dignity, where former staff returned through a new program called Retrain and Reclaim Talent. And most poignantly, the final scene showed the young boy, the son of that morning's first guest, sitting in the driver's seat of the Mirage Limited, hands resting on the wheel, eyes glowing. A dream reached not through a side door, not by exception, but by stepping through the front entrance, as it always should have been. A system that once seemed unshakable does not collapse in a single day, and it cannot be rebuilt through policy alone. It begins with the smallest of actions, like the way someone is welcomed when they walk through the door. The story of Janelle Harris is not just a dramatic unveiling, it is a powerful reminder that fairness does not come from reputation. It comes from how we treat those who should never have to prove they are worthy. If you believe that lasting change begins with the courage to face the truth, then like this video, subscribe to the channel to help share meaningful stories, and don't forget to leave a comment with the words, "Choose fairness," because sometimes a simple choice can rewrite an entire system.